Remington podcast, where we talk about all things ammunition. Today, we're talking wildlife conservation with founder of Blood Origins, Dr. Robbie Kroger. Robbie, you're from Blood Origins. You're the founder of Blood Origins.
Founder of Blood Origins, yep.
Yeah. Can you tell me about what you guys do and what your mission is?
Simple, conveying the truth about hunting. That is our mission. That is the mission statement. It's the mission statement that we had to give to the IRS. Mm-hmm. It is what we do. And it's when we converted ourselves into a 501c3 nonprofit. So we're a public charity now. And it's the business model that allowed us to expand, allowed us to sort of create what we do. And that is, we just create content in the social media world. That's where we live. Mm-hmm. We may expand in the future, in the next probably 12 months, into more of the written space, more of the article, rebuttal, opinion, blog style space. Mm-hmm. I feel like we haven't touched that at all yet, and I feel like there's a lot of room there. And if we have the right people doing the work with us, that we can dominate certain spaces. Especially if, in the internet world, you type in hunting and wolves in Colorado, right? What's going to come up first in the SEO, in the Google search engine? The
proposition, probably.
Yeah, but we would like, eventually, here's an article, a blog post by Blood Origins about it. And someone clicks it because we're number one.
Right. You want
or
the
number
SEO.
2 or number 3. Mm-hmm. That's where we want to be. Mm-hmm. Eventually if you say, well, what's our ultimate goal? Our ultimate goal is one day, not so far in the distant future, is that if anything happens around hunting in the world, I want people to turn to us and say, oh, what's Robbie saying about it? What's Blood Origin saying about it?
As a source of information?
As a source of truth. Mm-hmm. As a source of because I'm not going to, not say when something is really bad around hunting. Mm-hmm. I'm okay saying it. That's wrong.
Right.
Shouldn't be doing that. Hey, we shouldn't be hunting.
Right.
If the population's that low, quit hunting, guys.
Mm-hmm. Or it shouldn't be that easy to harvest that many animals.
Or whatever, right? We're not going to shy away from, we're not going to be, we say this constantly, we do not put hunting on a pedestal. We don't put hunting is not the panacea to wildlife management, to wildlife conservation. It's just a tool in the toolbox for wildlife conservation in the future. Mm-hmm. That's it. And if it works, phenomenal, great. That's it. It does very well in lots of places around the world, but there's also places around the world that it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't need to be brought in to be utilized in a wildlife management fashion. And so that's where we want to be. We want to be at this place where, hey, what happens, example A or B or C around the world happens, and when you start looking for information immediately, we are there. Mm-hmm. You want to see it. There's a YouTube video, there's an Instagram post, there's a blog written, or there's already an opinion rebuttal pushed forward, because we're not a very big bureaucratic beast of a nonprofit. We're very small. I'm the only sort of paid employee of the nonprofit, and that's how we want to stay. Mm-hmm. We want to stay super nimble. Something happens in Australia tonight, we can respond tomorrow.
Right.
And be really confident in what we say. We say it in a very respectful manner. We say it in a very gentlemanly way. Mm-hmm. But it's full of facts. It's full of science.
Very educated.
It's very educated. Mm-hmm. And it's very... A friend of Blood Origins hates me saying this, but I say it's very middle of the road as well. Mm-hmm. It's very just hey, we look at this side and we look at this side and we talk about both. We don't just heavily lean in a right or a left kind of scenario. It's a very middle of the road approach to what we do.
Right.
Yeah, and so that's Blood Origins. It started 6 years ago, as this idea of mine. I had 2 small boys and I wanted them to understand hunting. I was just getting into hunting as well at that point. And so I needed to understand hunting. And I wanted to understand, your heart. Why am I doing this? Mm-hmm. Am I doing it because I enjoy killing things? Do you hunt because you like killing things? Or is there more to it?
Right.
And so I looked at outdoor television. I looked at outdoor media. And I couldn't find anyone talking about their heart. I didn't see any of the big, and not to be saying this in a sexist comment way, but the it's a very male-dominated industry.
It is, yeah.
And I didn't see any of these males being vulnerable or being emotional or being super transparent, because that's not what you're supposed to be as a man,
it's like
right?
Excited, woo! I just killed this thing, and there's no there's no background or explanation of why or
there's no depth to it.
Where did this come from? Right.
There's no depth to it. There's no layering to it. And I was like, man, I wish people would talk more about that, because I would learn what I was trying to find, like what I was seeking. And I just decided to build it. And so we just started talking about people's hearts. Like we would interview you, Audrey, your heart. Like, why do you hunt? And then we happened to come across some really famous hunters that were keen to do it as well, like Jim Shockey and Will Primos and Cuz Strickland. But then Joe Blows, like Joanna Dart, who nobody knows, is a South Korean adoptee who lives in, Detroit, Michigan.
Right.
And so we told everybody stories. It didn't matter who you were. And because in the journey of me asking people for money, so I'm sure you get approached and Joel gets approached 1,000 times a week. Hey, I've got this great hunting show. You should partner with me.
Yeah.
You should support me. You should give me money. I was one of those. And everyone said no to me.
Yeah, you got to hustle.
And I just said, well, I'll just keep going. I just used my own savings account. And my wife said to me 3.5 years later, she was like, look, I love your passion for what you're doing, but I want my savings account back.
Sure.
Like, you've got to make this sustainable this year. Otherwise, you're done. We're out.
Yeah.
Go back to your normal job. And we made it sustainable, and then we turned ourselves into a nonprofit. And then that was it. Off to the races. And then off to the races in terms of the content we could create as well. It wasn't just about the stories of someone's heart, which we still do today. I think we're at like number 78 or number 79.
That's awesome.
But we now do all sorts of things. Obviously, we have a podcast. Obviously, we do now documentaries. We're in the talking head space. People value our opinion, so they want to hear from us. Like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Why are you going to say something about that? Are you going to say something about that? And then just amplify it around the world. Like my phone, when I'm one of those people. I don't know what kind of person you are. I didn't see your phone earlier, but the fact that there are red dots on this phone.
That gives me anxiety. It's fine.
So same as me. Same as me. Okay, we're in the same boat. There's two types of people in this world. People that have no red dots on their phone and those that have like 10,000 unread emails.
That's not me.
No.
So
when I wake up in the morning, my phone looks like there's hundreds of red dots. Because you think of it a way of how to get us, and we're not hard to find. Right. People are reaching out through those mechanisms.
Well, that's good, though. I mean, you did a complete 180, yeah.
It's great, but it's also like 24/7, 365.
Yeah.
I'm not complaining at all. I just, my struggle today is like balance.
Oh, yeah.
Like switching off and saying, okay, I'm going to take the day off. It's a Sunday. I'm allowed to take Sunday off. Let me go spend time with my kids.
Right.
Versus, fighting with someone over social media.
Yeah. I mean, passion projects end up kind of being your life, don't they?
Well, this one did, which was awesome. Like I turned my passion project into a job.
A career, yeah.
A career.
Which is just starting, which is crazy.
Just starting, 3 years.
I mean, you just showed me a video of all that what's to come, and it looks insane. So
it's insane.
Yeah, I'm so excited for you guys.
And that's just what we did in the last 12 months. Like, we've got a stacked calendar for the next 12 months. So we're going to film that plus something in the next 12 months.
Right.
So it's just bigger stories, more people, finding better stories, finding more impact, finding more benefits, finding more consequences, and just showcasing that, telling more of that story.
I think that the personal aspect is super important in these stories, though, as well. And you have plenty of that kind of content, obviously, but I think that the personal stories and the personal relations is what really gets people to interact with your brand and interact with, what you're trying to do. What is your story behind hunting?
So I only started hunting when I came to the States. I hunted doves and pigeons once with my grandfather in a little town called Brakpan in Johannesburg, South Africa, just outside of Johannesburg, South Africa. Mm-hmm. That was when I was 16. Never shot a shotgun before in my life. My dad showed me how to do it. It was a double trigger. He allowed me to shoot 3 doves off the fence. They had landed. Mm-hmm. Okay, this is how you aim. Okay, you got 3. Okay, from now on, only flying birds. Okay. And so, yeah, it was a great little experience, but I never really truly got hunting. My family, though, is steeped in hunting heritage. Like my grandfather lived the mecca of 2 hunting paradises that this world had to offer. One in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. He was in Russia, Siberia, northern China. He hunted white-eared pheasants in Tibet. Like he hunted that whole scene as a professional hunter, but then also like a hunter-gatherer at one point when the war was at its height. Mm-hmm. Like he was just going into the woods and finding meat for his family and friends kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And then he immigrated to Mozambique in 1954 and lived the heyday, like the Teddy Roosevelt heyday of Africa, 50s, 60s, up to 74 when Mozambique went through a revolution. And so my father's birthday, 16th birthday present in Mozambique from my grandfather was a Cape buffalo. Wow. So they did it all. They had incredible times in the bush. And my dad was the camp boy. Like they would go to the bush for 2.5 weeks. And my dad's job was to shoot an impala every other day for fresh liver for breakfast and camp rations and stuff. But when I grew up, there was nothing. We lived in Johannesburg, which is, 8.5 million people. Didn't grow up around hunting. I grew up in the generation of my father and my grandfather that was like kids were to be seen, not heard. So you never got like regaled with stories of them being charged by elephants or hippos, overturning their boat in the middle of the river at night when they're just 5 sheets to the wind drunk. But I got it all written. Like my grandfather was a phenomenal writer. So I got all that written stories and I've still got them today. And so I just never thought about hunting. I never missed hunting. It wasn't a part of my life. Just like probably 60% of the world that we speak to through Blood Origins has no idea about hunting. They really don't have an opinion about hunting. They might have seen something in the news or social media that might have moved them into a slightly negative perception around hunting, or opposite, slightly positive perception around hunting, which is what our job is to move someone into the slightly positive perception. Right. And so I arrived in Mississippi in 2003 to do a PhD. And I met a 6'5", 260-pound redneck who was like, "Do you like to hunt?" And I was like, "I don't know. I think I do." He says, "Well, you need to go get your hunter's education." So I got my hunter's education. And once I got that, he was like, "All right, let's go deer hunting." He gave me a chair, a sort of lawn chair, stuck me under a cedar tree in front of a pile of illegal bait way back in the day. And he said, if something walks by, shoot it. Just if a deer walks by, shoot it? Okay. Shoot it. Mississippi. And I was like, okay. And funnily enough, he gave me a 308, semi-automatic 308. Never shot a semi-automatic. And he was like, look, you have to be real quiet. So ease that mechanism forward. So I eased that mechanism forward. And this was literally, I think, my first ever hunt. And so nothing happened that morning. So I got up out where I was and I walked around this dam. I was like on the one side of the dam and I walked around the dam onto the back field. And then as you went from the back field to the next field, it was like a narrowing of a road. And as I got closer to the road, a buck stepped out. And knowing today what I know now, if I applied it then, it was probably a 120, 130 class buck. Oh, wow. Yeah, it was an incredible buck. Yeah. I was like, oh, hey. I lifted the gun up. I was so close that when I pulled the trigger and the trigger went click, the buck lifted his head and looked at me and ran away. Oh, no. And I was like, what the hell? What happened to the gun? Was your safety on? No. It clicked. It fired. It's just a misfire? And so I walked up to him. He goes, oh, what did you see? And I was like, well, I saw nothing sitting there, but I just missed a buck. He was like, what? And I explained to him the same story. And I said, but this gun doesn't work. He's like, what? He opened the chamber, pulled the bullet out, puts the same bullet back in, racks it forward, aims at his target, pulls the trigger, gun goes off. I'm like, what the hell? Yeah. He's like, what did you do? And I said, well, you told me when I got in the stand, I just need to like ease the mechanism forward. And he was like, oh, that's what you did wrong. So when I eased it forward, I didn't actually seat it.
Oh, okay.
It must have had like 1 millimeter or 2 millimeters of space because I didn't go whack. I just eased it and held it, you know, because I didn't know. Yeah. And that was the beginning of my sort of, what do they call it?
Obsession?
No, not obsession. What is it? Maladies? Sort of run of bad luck when it comes to hunting.
Oh, yeah.
I have a lot of those stories now.
Your series of unfortunate events.
It's very much like multiple misses, misfires, multiple like sitting in the same stand for days on end, not seeing anything and saying, okay, I'm switching stands. And the next person who sits in that stand sees an animal right away and kills it. That's me. I'm a very unlucky hunter.
Well, you stuck with it.
Exactly. So yeah, that was my journey. And then from there, we just started, we did what we typically do in Mississippi and hunt deer and a little bit of turkeys, a little bit of ducks, but deer were it. Then got, a real job and earned a little bit of money and started exploring a little bit more. Went to Colorado, tried an elk hunt, wasn't successful.
I know all about that.
And then that's what you told me. And then just started turkey hunting more and turkey hunting in different places. And yeah, then I started, again, having a little bit more money, a little bit more resource, and went to Argentina and killed that buffalo down there. Went to the Northern Territory, killed that buffalo over there.
That's crazy.
And so now, it's everyone's like, oh man, Robbie, you get to hunt everywhere now. Actually, I don't get to hunt at all anymore.
Do you just film people hunting?
We film because I'm just constantly in my brain thinking like it's just content for me versus like, man, you're in these awesome places all around the world. Why don't you just take, you've worked 2 weekends in a row, 2 weeks in a row. Why don't you just take 3 days and hunt?
Right. Yeah.
And balance your life and don't forget what you're fighting for. So I'm starting to do more of that.
Oh, that's good. You have to enjoy it a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you enjoy the
I love
content
it.
captures. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah,
but
it's the people and the relationships and the places we get to see. But then also like, okay, hey, someone's offering, let me take you hunting. Just say yes.
Right.
Just say yes.
Yeah. Because it's such an experience to get to hunt with another person too. It's a social event almost even. And I mean, the people that you go on these hunting trips with it's painful. It's almost like the more pain, the more connection you have with that other person.
I don't know. Sometimes, like, I'm not into that whole pain game.
Really?
No, not yet. You are.
I am.
Yeah, 9 days in the backcountry of Colorado. Dang, man. Yeah, I haven't done, like that Ardad hunt was the only real pain, but we stayed in a cabin at night. And the Northern Territory Australia trip wasn't pain. Well, we went up a river for 2.5 days and then came back down the river. But it was summer and we slept in hammocks and bathed in the river and with freshwater crocodiles.
That's crazy.
See, that's my kind of adventure.
Yeah.
Like I don't want like monstrous mountains and I can do it, but I'd prefer like a crazy like Northern Territory of Australia where there was nobody. Literally like somebody said when we killed the buffalo we killed. He said we were 8 miles east of the middle of nowhere.
Oh, well, that's great.
Just nowhere. Yeah. Like you knew there wasn't another soul for 50-mile radius around you, 100-mile radius around you.
I didn't even know that you could get that in Africa.
Not in Africa.
I'm sorry, where'd you say you were?
Northern Territory of Australia.
Of Australia. Northern Territory of Australia. I'm sorry. I thought that the only part of Earth that you could get that in at this point was Alaska.
What's that?
Just being somewhere where you know that there's nobody for hundreds of miles.
Northern Territory of Australia is millions and millions and millions of acres of nothing.
Really?
Nothing. Except beautiful bush, lots of things that will kill you, and animals you can hunt.
I have to ask about the spiders up there.
They'll kill you.
Are they like what you see in the YouTube videos?
No, you don't see them, but they're dangerous. Super dangerous. And then the snakes are worse. 9 of the 10 most venomous snakes in the world are in Australia.
It's like everything on the planet that is the worst, they just put in Australia.
Yeah, because the environment is like... So there's a snake called a taipan. One of the 9. Okay? There's an inland taipan, which is the normal taipan. Then you've got taipans on islands. called coastal taipans.
Okay.
That are like 300. So that normal taipan is deadly.
Okay.
You get bitten, you're done.
Uh-huh.
The coastal taipan, the one on the islands, is 300 times more venomous
Then that one?
than that one. And here's why. Their species of prey that they go after is birds.
Uh-huh.
So when they smack a birds, unlike a rodent, that if you smack it and you envenomate it, it's going to run somewhere, and a snake's sense of smell
Can find it.
Mm-hmm. When you bite a bird's going to fly away. You're not going to see it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So they need a venom so strong that when they envenomate that bird, it literally just
dies on point.
dead.
That's crazy.
That's so, but
No,
yeah.
thank you.
No, you'd love it. It's such a, and there's, but you come up to like little canyons or little cliff faces, and there's, Aboriginal rock art that nobody's ever seen before. Like we found rock art that nobody's ever seen before. I guarantee it, based on where we found it. Mm-hmm. We were the first white men to see it.
That is so cool. I think that's the coolest story I've ever heard.
No.
I think so.
Oh, then you're not around very exciting people.
Maybe not.
But that was one of my cool things. I wanted to do that. Like I said to the guys, like, where haven't you been on this property? Mm-hmm. Because we haven't gone up this river. And you have to be next to a river, otherwise there's no water.
Right.
And so you're filtering all the water out the river, but you just stay on the river, and there's just like these little gorges and whatnots, and we just explored them. Mm-hmm. And this one that we found, it was like it was probably double the size of this room in terms of how high the little cliff was. Mm-hmm. But there was like a little overhang that went back like in this corner. And if you didn't purposely like go in it and look up on the ceiling, you wouldn't have found it. But you looked up on the ceiling, there was a bunch of rock art.
Oh, that is so cool.
And you're like, holy smokes.
Yeah. I think that exploring places that not many people have been is really cool.
Yeah.
I've never been one that's like, I really want to go to space, but underwater or like places on Earth that people have never been, I think that is where it's at for me.
Yeah. This was the place. You need to go to the Northern Territory of Australia.
That's awesome. When I think Australia, I just think great white sharks. So like,
a lot of those
maybe
too.
not.
A lot of those too. But you don't have to get on the water. They're not on land. Just FYI.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. That's awesome. Well, I know that you have a connection with storytelling a lot like I do. What is one of the most impactful stories that has ever been told to you?
Like we physically have told, or that I've heard?
I want to know a story that someone has told you that has really hit you, like hit home for you.
It's just like we get privileged to listen to like so many freaking stories.
Oh yeah,
like everywhere around the world. Mm-hmm. There's stories like, I think the most impactful, if I can remember, because it just happened recently. So when I go to South Africa every year after Thanksgiving, because what the professional hunters associations in South Africa have their annual general meetings, their AGMs. Okay. And you'll start in South Africa, then you'll go to Zimbabwe, and then you'll go to Namibia. They have them back to back to back to back. Mm-hmm. And the one in South Africa is called, there's two hunting organizations in South Africa, one called FASA, which is the Professional Hunters Association of South Africa, and then there's one called Custodians, the Custodians and Professional Hunters of South Africa. The Custodians, at the Custodians event, every year for the last 2 years, they've hosted this Legends Campfire, which is essentially old-timers, old hunters that have been in the industry for 30, 40 years. Mm-hmm. We put them on stage and we interview it just like a podcast. Mm-hmm. And luckily, I've been asked to be the MC of that event. So I've got to engage with these guys and sort of their funny stories, and then they're really like sad, impactful stories. Mm-hmm. And so last year, the final question I asked these guys was like, can you tell a story like that you were like, wow, I don't know what's going to happen to me or to someone else in this story. Mm-hmm. And the first guy talked about, he was a helicopter pilot, and he talked about how he had been radioed that a ranger had gone in and found poachers and had ambushed the poachers, and a gunfight broke out, and one of the rangers got shot. and he needed to be medevaced. He needed to be airlifted out like ASAP. And so Howard took his helicopter up, flew over there, landed next to the guy, and he was shot up like really badly, just bleeding everywhere. And they'd done their best to like put bandages on him and whatnot. And Howard's helicopter had no doors on it.
Okay.
Because they had been doing a bunch of like rhino darting operations. And so they threw the guy in the back of the helicopter for Howard to start taking off. And as he started taking off, the rotor wash that came into the cab like picked up all the blood on the guy and literally splattered blood everywhere in the cab as he was taking off. And he said it was just like he had no idea if the guy was going to live or die because there was just literally blood everywhere. On the inside of his windshield, whatnot, so he had to wipe it down.
So he could see.
Yeah, it was, and he was also looking outside of his window. So that was the first story. And then the second story, this guy started talking about how he was on a hunt and with clients, and they were going off to Cape Buffalo. They had wounded a Cape Buffalo, and things went south on the track job. And this guy, John Oosthuizen, got mixed up with the buffalo, and the buffalo got him and started goring him and started like moving him around and tossing him in the air. And when he landed, the buffalo would come back on him, and he didn't know where he was, and he didn't know. He could feel himself like, I'm going to die. I'm literally going to die with this buffalo.
He had accepted it.
And what he remembered like just putting his head back and his eyes open, and he saw his tracker come up next to him like this and take the gun and literally wait for the buffalo to like lift his head off because he was goring him like this.
On him.
On him. And as he lifted his head up to look opposite, the tracker put the gun barrel like right behind the buffalo's head and shot the buffalo and killed him immediately. And the saddest part about that story was that John had like literally owed his life to his tracker. And his tracker had died like 3 weeks before he told us this story.
Oh my gosh.
And he was breaking down, like literally he was reliving the whole like buffalo experience in front of us, like crying, and it was like it was a pin drop you could hear in the whole place.
Right.
So yeah, those are those are the kinds of stories we get told, and people just we get to film people's stories that. How hunting has changed their lives. Like, right, we took a guy that got blown up by an IED in Afghanistan. He's got 2, prosthetics. And I walked him through the sort of sticky red Georgia clay for 2 days, 7 miles and 8 miles the next day. And to him, it was the best thing he's ever done. And like he was keeping up with me, like in the field. And to him, like that was cathartic. It was like, this was his stress relief. This is the thing that he got away from the whole PTSD associated with being blown up and war and all those kinds of things. So, yeah, I feel like we're in a very, very privileged place to listen, to hear, to expose, because that's really what we do a little bit is from a storytelling perspective is expose people's hearts and tell them to get them a little rawer than they would normally be willing to do. So
show their vulnerabilities a little bit.
Yeah, vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
Their authentic self and sort of, and sometimes you have to put them back in the situation that they don't want to be in and relive that day or that moment or that story. And
yeah, that's like such a privilege that they share that with you.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And we get to film it, and then we get to and I think. The other thing that I never realized at the beginning of this journey was that we're almost immortalizing people.
Oh, yeah.
And we've had 3 people, maybe 4 at this stage that have died. And we've got their film. Like we've got the only content probably of them.
Right, ever.
Like Miss Bonnie Ellis, she was 91 when we filmed her in Aberdeen, South Dakota. She came in a full army getup, full army dress. Her... dog tags around her neck, and Miss Bonnie Ellis in 1943 was 18 years old. Was the height of austerity measures in America. Was the height of World War II in America, and Aberdeen, South Dakota, was a train hub for sending soldiers to Chicago, and then they were getting on boats in Chicago and sending them over to Europe. And Miss Bonnie was a server in the canteen. There was a canteen that Aberdeen set up that served pheasant sandwiches to all the soldiers that came into Aberdeen. It's a famous story. Like if you fly to Aberdeen, South Dakota, on the opening day of pheasant season every year, they will give you a free pheasant sandwich as you enter the airport.
Oh, that's awesome.
Exit the airport. And so Miss Bonnie was the only woman still alive. It was an all-woman run canteen, and the trains would stop, the soldiers would get off the trains, and they would be fed cookies, tea, I think coffee, and these pheasant sandwiches. And the Fish and Wildlife Service, the game department, said you can shoot as many pheasants as you wanted if it was going to sandwich making. The farmers pooled their gas, they pooled their shotgun shells to essentially feed the army. And so Miss Bonnie's brother died in World War II as she was doing this work in the pheasant canteen. And then she decided to enlist herself. So she enlisted as a nurse. And then she came through Aberdeen on the train to get her own pheasant sandwich. But we interviewed all the ladies, including Miss Bonnie, that were like kids. They were like 11-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old kids, like running around, helping their mothers with the pheasant canteen. Yeah,
Who
we filmed them.
Full-grown.
Yeah, they were 60, 70-year-old ladies. Yeah. Yeah, we called it, you want to look it up, it's called Living Legacy.
Okay, Living Legacy. I like that. That's a
But we've got that
really
story. Like
story.
Miss Bonnie has passed. And so we've got pictures and video of Miss Bonnie that nobody has.
Right. That maybe no one has ever taken.
Yeah,
you know?
Here's the crazy thing. Here's the absolute and nobody will pick it up. They may when they watch this. So there's a little trailer of Living Legacy. And whilst we were filming it, a train came into the station. It's a museum now, right? But it's still an active railway line. And we have Miss Bonnie, you got this shot of her looking out the window, and we're filming it from the right-hand side, and the train comes in from the left. What do you think the train's number was that came in?
I have no idea.
1776.
No way.
1776.
That's crazy.
It was amazing. We didn't know it at the time, but only once we looked at the footage, we're like, and she's just this stoic, looking out, remembering, this is where the trains used to come in.
You couldn't have planned that.
Oh,
you
man.
know?
It's insane.
Yeah.
It's insane.
That's awesome.
So, yeah. Those are the things we love to do, man. And it's a privilege we get to do.
Yeah. I mean, it is immortalization. That story will go on now because you have produced it.
Yeah. We filmed, Jason Hairston. Jason Hairston was the CEO of Kuyu and committed suicide. Right. And we released his Blood Origins episode 3 weeks before he died.
Crazy with the timing.
And, we filmed another guy for SCI, a guy called Scott Chapman. He was the Hall of Fame recipient for SCI. He walked around at 240 and he was a 6'3", 6'4" guy. When we filmed him, he was dying of pancreatic cancer. And he was 160 pounds in front of us. And we filmed him. We knew this is it.
It was either now or never.
And he knew it was it. And so we finished filming and we said, hey, do you want to say something to your wife?
On camera.
On camera. And we can give it to her. He's like, yeah. And I was bawling.
Yeah, there's no way there was a
Jesse, my other camera, was bawling. He was fine. We were both gosh.
Losing it.
And then we pulled it, and then he died 4 weeks later.
Wow.
And then we released the film at the event where he won it. And the whole crowd, the entire banquet hall was crying. Yeah. It was the best piece that we had. It was amazing.
Done at that point. Yeah. I mean, you're preserving these people's place in history.
Exactly.
So,
exactly. And interestingly enough, the keynote speaker of that night was Tucker Carlson. And Tucker got up right after that video played. And he was like, I've never seen a video like that. Yeah. He's and he built tells you how good Tucker is. He built his entire speech. Whether he had a predetermined idea of what he was going to say, he changed it to what he heard in that film.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he quoted him. He remembered what he said and constantly reiterated it for the 30 minutes of him speaking.
It really affected him then.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable.
That's awesome. I mean, I love to hear the great work that you guys do. I told you that I was just stalking your website the other day. So, I mean, I've seen the content that you guys put out, and it's really touching stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Going back to, you said that you had 2 sons. What are some of the activities? What are some of the things that you do to instill this kind of lifestyle into them?
I don't do enough because I travel too much right now. But they know where their food comes from.
Oh, yeah.
Like every time we cook something, I'll ask them like, what is that meat that you're eating? And they'll say it's deer, or if it's nilgai, or if it's whatever. And then I'll say, well, where'd it come from? They're like, you killed it, Dad. I was like, yeah, I killed it. And we processed it. And, know. So that's right now. And then it's just trying to get them into the woods and, having them comfortable shooting guns and whatnots. And but again, I do a terrible job of it because I've lost, because the job that it is, I just don't have the balance right now. And I'll get it.
You're working on it.
I'm working on it.
Yeah.
I'm working on it. But no, I wish I could do more. And their lives are busy too. They've got scouts, and my oldest is in scouts. He loves it. And the littlest one is in gymnastics, and he loves that. And days and weekends are busy, and I just got to find the time I've got to find the time, which I'm doing now. Like this, once I get off this podcast, when I go home from here, that's it. Like I'm not traveling until Jan 10.
Oh,
Jan
wow.
11.
That's a great break. Yeah.
So I've got a great
need
break.
that break for sure. You just hustle all year round.
Yeah.
So,
and then I'll try and disconnect a little bit and see if we can go deer hunting and,
maybe let those notifications stack up a little bit.
Maybe. That's not my personality, but maybe. Maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm doing as much as I can right now in where I'm at for them to, if they want to be hunters, great. If they don't, that's also fine.
Yeah.
But I don't want them to ever just be like, oh, we don't like it because. I want to have those kinds of conversations with them.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, just giving them the opportunity to decide is important, in my opinion.
And my wife doesn't hunt, so
yeah,
she's not a hunter. She likes the meat, but nah.
It's all right. Not every lady is a hunter, and that's fine.
Correct. That's correct.
Well, it was great sitting here and chatting with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. I'm humbled and grateful. Thank you for the tour, and thank you for allowing me to be on your podcast.
Yeah, hopefully you'll come down to Arkansas and do some public land duck hunting with me sometime.
Public land?
Public land.
Oh, man, roughing it.
To show you a little bit of pain.
Okay, we can do it. We can do it.
Definitely. Well, there you have it, guys. Remington is on the rise. Thanks again to Dr. Robbie Kroger from Blood Origins for joining us on today's podcast. If you want to stream us on a podcast platform, you can find us anywhere you can stream podcasts. If you want to follow us on social media, we're at Remington1816 on all platforms. If you want to contact us, you can reach out at podcast@remington.com. That's podcast@remington.com. Thanks for listening.